Let me ask you this. How do you find it to be positive or negative? What are the positives or negative of being a woman in these games?
Yeah, I think the way I've always explained it is that, I think being a woman can make it harder to get to high stakes. A pretty common story that I've seen, is that, a woman dated someone else and then like they generally got her better at the game. This obviously doesn't apply for everyone. But then once you like get to higher stakes games and like, have something resembling the skill set and like bankroll or whatever, it is now like much better in terms of having access and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Also, like, crazy hands get played all the time, but I do feel like people can blast off against women a little bit more. Or like every now and then there's a guy in JRB's game where like, every like few pots when I was like, I think he would do this in position. Like, yeah, he would be in position for a hand. And like before I could even do anything, he would just like fold the flop. And like, usually it was like boards that were like good for me or whatever. But like this guy just really did not make me work for it. And it's like, okay, well, thanks. I appreciate it.
That seems like a big advantage. Someone's just gonna like fold a third of the flop. What the fuck?
Yeah. So not too many, like, I can think of like the amount of times there's someone like really like let me off the hook in a hand, like probably, well, on one hand. But that has happened like a few times where I don't know how many times you've been let off the hook where like, you had the second best hand that could have lost a lot of money, but someone was just like, no, Dan, save your money. Like,
what?
Does that ever happen?
What do you mean? How does this happen? What do you mean? How does it happen where you had the second best hand?
Yeah, so there was like one time where I had kings and someone else had aces. And when I was taking pre-flop, at some point they just quickly flashed me the aces. And I was like, okay.
What? Well. What the fuck? I'm trying to think if that ever happened to me. I don't know if that ever happened to me. Yeah, I don't know.
I would assume that has not happened to most men. And then there was one other time where I was playing quarter 50, and this was a girlfriend who actually did this. But on the turn, I had top pair, top kicker. It was like, let's just call it 10-6 deuce, and the turn was like a 4 or something. So I was like, okay, like I have a good but not great hand. She like overbets the turn. And then I tank for like 90 seconds, and eventually she's just like, okay, like fold Lynne, I have it. And her average stake is like much higher. It's probably like 200, 400 or something. So I don't think she really cared, but that was also something that I was like, whoa, like that's kind of insane. And I talked to her about it afterward. I'm like, hey, like this makes me uncomfortable because I would hope that like, I don't think she would ever expect that from me. And still like, I'm here to like play the game.
Right. Yeah. That's a weird one. I wasn't expecting this to be, I mean, I guess I could have guessed because like men do this all the time, right? They like are too nice to women a lot of the time.
Yeah.
That's a nice perk, I guess, take it.
Yeah, I'm not complaining.
Oh, okay. Do people, like, are there styles different in any other kinds of ways? You say they're just too aggressive sometimes, or do they overfold? I would think that there are people that have very strong polarizations for one thing. I've heard a bunch of different things, to be honest. So there's that. Let's start with that.
Do people overfold? I don't think they overfold against me. I think I've just shown enough of a capacity to put my chips in with 0%, drawing stone dead for that to be true. I do think in some games, so this is kind of actually not answering the question you asked, but there's some games where I'll see someone like play like one way against one person. So like against an action player, they'll give a ton of action. And it's taken me a long time to learn that like, oh, just because a reg is playing like that against a fish does not mean they're playing like that against me. So yeah, I think most players in most games treat me like most other players. If I've been snugger that day, yeah, they're much more reasonable. Definitely don't think I'm getting more folds than I should be in most places. If anything, I'm probably getting called down a little bit lighter.
Okay, that's funny. I didn't really expect that, I guess. I've heard that there's, I've heard people say a few things. I've heard people say, like one friend of mine, one that's a girl, she says that she like gets some backing deals or whatever. But the problem is that a lot of like guys do that and they have this ulterior motive of trying to like sleep with them and they don't say it. I've heard this a bit. I would think this happens a fair amount or in some form or another. And there's that in like other forms of, I'm not sure if like sexual harassment happens. I'm trying to find out out what's going on. Because I feel like for two different things.
Yeah, they are two rather different things. I think both I encountered a lot more at lower stakes, and I would say like for most of my career, I've never really like been looking for backing, so that wasn't really like a thing. Honestly, a lot of these problems I haven't faced in the last like I would say 5+ years.
Oh, cool.
I will say like walking through like lower stakes areas in casinos. Maybe like I'll wear something like this to the game, but like it's probably good to have like a hoodie on walking in if I just want to like avoid getting catcalled. Does that really bother me? No. Depending on the day, it might be annoying. I mean, laugh if you want. Like, I think it's amusing. But I would generally say that like the smaller a circle is, the better people treat each other. Because if you're going to see each other twice a week, multiple weeks in a row, like, do you really want to be known as the sex asshole? For most people, the answer is no. So yeah, I guess I also have pretty thick skin. So it's like pretty unlikely that things bother me. And if they do, I try to confront people pretty directly. But I can't even remember. Yeah, I can't remember the last time I've like had an issue with someone at a poker table.
That's very promising. Yeah. I think someone did say like maybe that this stuff happens at lower stakes. I would think it happens more in LA too. It would be my personal guess, just because like the nature of the private games is kind of, I don't know, it's just it looks like something could happen or whatever.
I don't play in those private games. Like I am not in games anymore where there are like the cocktail girls might be moonlighting as escorts. Not that there's anything wrong with that. And whereas there's like, lines of coke getting passed around. Yeah, I imagine it like very much so could happen. If anything, which I think is kind of interesting, I've actually different, cultures obviously have different attitudes, but if anything, I think like, Americans are like more scared of like problems. Whereas like when I play in London, like people are like chummier and whatnot. So I think it took me a little bit to realize like, oh, this isn't really like, sexual harassment. Their friendliness is just like a little bit more.
Are you saying that Americans are less flirty? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I would say, less flirty, less aggressive, less whatever. Like if I wear, like something boobsy or whatever, I'm much more likely to get comments on it, like in London as opposed to LA.
I did not. Yeah, that's very interesting.
Yeah,
all right.
There's yeah.
If you happen to play some live poker, you got to know what the rake is. You got to know what realistic win rates are. You got to know this kind of stuff. Speaking of which, on the Jungleverse, we provide many resources to help many of you up-and-coming players in order to avoid many pitfalls that many people play, also to avoid getting cheating. We provide some details of what to look out for. We have a map of what the best online sites are to play at and why, and what kind of games you're looking for. If you want to try your luck and try to strike it rich, playing tournaments, why not? The math's a bit against you. We have the resources for that too.